All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another live edition of the WGSN-DB Going Solo Veterans Corner. I'm your host, retired Army First Sergeant Paul Holbert, live from Northern Virginia. And we're going to meet tonight's guest in just a moment. But before we do that, I want to take a moment to give a shout out to our two wonderful sponsors of our Veterans Show. First, I want to thank Quest Jewelers from Merrifield, Virginia. And folks, we always have the holidays coming up. For you ladies, Father's Day is the next one in the barrel. So I suggest if you're looking for something special for that special guy, contact Quest Jewelers in Merrifield at questjewelers.com, or you can give them a call and talk to Pete and his brother Juan. They are the owners of the shop and some really great guys, and they will help you out. Ladies, it might be an opportunity for you to get on the website and find something you really like and leave that hint to your special person as well. So check out Quest Jewelers in Merrifield and give them a call. I also want to thank you or send a thank you out, excuse me, a slip of the tongue there, to Nationwide IT Services. NIS is a service disabled veteran owned small business located in Fairfax, Virginia. CK Park and his professional crew there are there to help you with all of your business needs, whether it's IT support, training, 360 assessments, management, performance management, whatever your needs may be for your business. He has a professional staff there. And one thing I have to say that I really love is that CK employees, about 60% of his staff are veterans. So he really looks out for the veteran as he does by sponsoring our show. So again, check out Nationwide IT Services. All right. So tonight, for our guest tonight is retired Army Colonel Robert Huber. And Bob, he actually started his career, interestingly enough, enlisted, intended basic training in 1989. He came out as a communications specialist. The interesting thing is, he later went on to, he was commissioned in 1993 as an officer from the North Carolina State Universities in Raleigh. He holds a Bachelor of Arts in Business Management from NCSU and has a Master's of Public Administration from Western Kentucky University. And an interesting thing, a Master of Arts in Defense Studies from King College and the University of London. So, I want to take this moment here to thank you, Bob, for taking the time to come on the show, especially, given the fact that you're starting your family's vacation and you're taking time out at the start of the vacation to join us here on Veterans Corner. So welcome.
No, thank you, Paul, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk to everybody here. And I would tell you that it's my honor whenever you talk about veterans. That rings true to me, and that's always been a priority for me, as it has for many of us on the line. So absolutely honored to be able to talk a little bit and have a conversation with you about service.
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoy doing this show and talking to all the guests because, we get so many backgrounds and so many stories. And I found yours interesting because, I mean, I've had a couple of guests that started enlisted and were later commissioned. But the interesting thing is you started your commission in aviation and then moved to another field after that. Can you share a little bit about how you started with aviation?
Sure, absolutely. So as you stated, went to basic and AIT over at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. Thoroughly enjoyed that, and then obviously transitioned through ROTC. I was fortunate enough to get a commissioning out of North Carolina State and get selected for aviation. I will tell you, to start with a little bit of levity, I actually, when I was selecting the branches, I had actually selected armor and infantry as my top two. And then one of my instructors, who I would consider sometimes adversarial, was looking over my shoulder as I was filling out the sheet of paper for branch selection. And he was an aviator. And he actually said, "Hey, I'm glad you didn't pick aviation because you probably won't get it." So I said, "Really?" So I actually scratched that off, put aviation on the top, armor second, because, I thought, okay, I'm not going to get selected for aviation. And started, was fortunate enough to get picked up and went to flight school at Fort Rucker.
Yeah, I did a little work with some folks from Fort Rucker when I was stationed at Fort Benning, running the Chem Bio school there, and back and forth with a number of the units there because I used to send students through my course at Fort Benning. Um, I lovingly got, how can I say, got introduced to what the Army lovingly calls rotor heads. The chopper pilots when I was in 2nd Aviation Battalion in Korea. So that was kind of my experience with aviation. So how long were you flying?
I flew probably consistently all the way up to about 2006. And then as you continue to go through the ranks, it's less and less stick time, unfortunately.
Yeah.
The warrant officers do the vast majority of the flying. And then when I got out after being XO, I took a different route through air traffic control, airspace, and airfields. So that kind of pulled me out of the operational units for flying, but thoroughly enjoyed it. I would tell you that the connection between the armor and the aviation, I've always been a attack cav guy. So flying Cobras and Apaches with guns on it, it's a flying tank, if you will, and thoroughly enjoyed my time in all the units that I had an opportunity to be part of.
Yeah, so and we'll talk a little bit about your time in the cab, because what's interesting is yours and my career, we chewed a lot of the same dirt during our careers between tours in Korea, and both of us were instructors. I spent, my goodness, even though I spent most of my career in the Chemical Corps, I spent most of my tactical career in cav and armored cav units. Cav squadrons and armored cav units. And I do have to say, I was so very happy to see a Cobra pilot when I was in the desert, because he flew over us and waxed a couple of Iraqi tanks that were bypassed that we ran into. So it was great to see those guys overhead when you guys flying like that, I'm telling you. So you enjoyed your time in aviation, I assume.
Absolutely. The warrant officers, the NCOs, and the soldiers, and the troopers, more importantly, that I had an opportunity to work with, were phenomenal. I tend to be, I look at the world through a very simple lens. I enjoy meeting Joe from New Hampshire, from Oklahoma, from California, Oregon, Texas, Mississippi, South Carolina, wherever they may be. They all have different stories. They came to the military for various reasons, sometimes the same. But when you're out there, you're out in the field, or you're out downrange getting shot at, or you're prepping for another rotation in NTC, JRTC, and you get to really know these men and women that are sacrificing so much. To me, call me Pollyannish, but that's very special to me, that I got an opportunity to work with so many great people, great Americans that put country and service before anything else. And I enjoyed every minute of it. I miss it, but events like this, going to the local VFW, going to the parades out downtown Manassas, those are always special for me. And I thoroughly enjoy being a part of that tradition and that group of people.
Yeah, I think I can echo that, because that means a lot. And I mean, you've experienced that to a great extent. And, I look at it the same way. That was one thing I enjoyed during my time, and especially when I was a first sergeant, because a first sergeant to just give you the license to mess with troops. And you always enjoy messing with the troops about where they're from and, anything about them. But you're right. The human part of that, and that exchange and getting to know people, I think is so important. And I think that's kind of what makes the military career a little different than, our civilian counterparts to an extent.
Yeah, I agree. That level of camaraderie, that bond, making sure that your soldiers are resourced, that they have challenging training, that you empower your NCOs, you make sure that they are able to attend their schools, they meet all their gates, you give them the mission and intent, and you let them move out. And I have never encountered a scenario where if you give the senior NCO Corps the mission and the intent, and give them the resources and just let them conduct business, they will execute and always impress. I've been very fortunate to work with a lot of great leaders. I'm a firm believer as a prior enlisted guy and a graduate of PLDC at Fort Jackson many moons ago. That is what runs the Army. And I will tell you that if you empower those NCOs and give them the resources they need, they will always impress.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that, because my first experience as a platoon sergeant, I was in Germany, in Nuremberg, as a matter of fact, in 2nd ACR. And I had a young lieutenant come over, chemical officer, to take over as a platoon leader, because when I went to the desert, I didn't have one. I deployed to the desert myself with my platoon. So it was my first experience with a platoon leader. The first day he got there, he came into we shared a big joint office. We closed the door for about 15 minutes. And he said, let me tell you what I envision. He said, my envision is to help plan with the platoon, plan the training schedule, look at the resources, run interference with the commander. And he said, I think your job is just to make sure that it gets done. And he asked me, he said, how do you see it? And I just sat back and I looked at him. I said, well, you know what, sir? I said, I think we're going to get along great. And we sure did. We had a good time with the platoon, but you're right. And it's such a good feeling to have, your officers respect you that way and feel confident to do that. So now one thing I found interesting is that, there you were an aviation officer flying aircraft, and then you went on and attended the Field Artillery Officer Advanced Course. How did that happen?
Yeah, so that is a funny story. Again, I tend to get the what's the color of the second place ribbon? Is it red? Blue being first, red being second. I think third is yellow. Forgive me, I'm going back to my grade school days. But at the time, I had done a tour in Korea with Cobras. I had moved over to Hawaii, fortunate enough, with Cobras, because I love that airplane. If you've ever flown the Snake. And the warrant officers and the NCOs and soldiers and commissioned officers that are in that arena, I wanted to experience the same airplane that was used so eloquently and effectively in Vietnam. Hearing those stories as you're growing up. So I was able to go to Hawaii, and I would tell you that I had a good mentor and leader, battalion commander, that really, really taught us tons and spent time with the leaders, both officer and NCO and warrant officers. And try to say, hey, always take the tough road, always take the tough assignments. You'll learn more, you'll grow from them. So a vast majority of people were going to aviation advanced course. And I had actually requested armor advanced course because I had been told armor advanced course is exceptional. They really focus on, preparing you tactically, strategically, and it's a very challenging course. So I, being the country knucklehead from North Carolina mountains, said, why not? I'll take armor. There was actually a 160th guy that got the armor slot, and the next class up was field artillery. And they asked me, do you want it? And I said, yeah, absolutely. I'll take it. I just want something that's challenging, off the beaten path, and something that will develop me. And funny enough, I would tell you, as an Apache guy in a field artillery officer advanced course, I kind of stuck out a little bit. But my goal was obviously to blend in. And oddly enough, it was my second iteration of coming back to Fort Sill. What was that, 1989 versus 1999? So 10 years later, I'm back there going through the advanced course, and I met lifelong friends there.
Yeah, that's why I said our careers are kind of funny, because I started mine in 1981 at Fort Sill, because my first MOS, I was a 13 Echo fire direction guy.
Oh, outstanding.
And that's what I spent my first career at. So, I started at Fort Sill, and then, I branch transferred over when I re-enlisted. But when I was looking at your information, I sat there and looked at it, and I said, wait a minute, this guy's an aviation officer. How the heck did he end up in the field artillery advanced course? I had, to be honest with you, I had never seen that before. This is the first time that I had seen that. That's why I was so curious. So what did you do when you went to the course? I mean, I know you took all the required things just like the other artillery officers did, but I guess I'm just curious as to how you were able to jump and fit right into that, not having been to an artillery basic course or any of that type of stuff.
No, that's a great question, Paul. So not to go down too many rabbit holes, but the short version is the theme from DA at the time, or now what they call HRC, I think, Department of the Army PERSCOM. A lot of people know it as PERSCOM. When you call your branch manager, you say, "Hey, which course can I go to?" The party line that was being sung was, all advanced courses are generally all the same. and they are not. As aviators jump into simulators and they go to the flight line and they do whatnot. On the artillery side, obviously at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, they started with manual gunnery. So what was interesting is that in addition to, we had myself, I think there was an ordnance officer and an armor officer as three individuals from different branches. And then they had international students. So one of the prerequisites before you went and started the Field Artillery Advanced course was you had to go to 3 weeks of basically orientation. And while we were there, they wanted to, dare I say, green us with some artillery flavor. And we went through a manual gunnery prep with the slide rules and everything. And I will tell you that we did it there. And then when we did it in the advanced course, at least when I went through in 1999, the instructors were Marine Corps officers. So I had a Marine Corps captain that was given my small group a class on manual gunnery. And I kept, number one, I got a tutor really quick. I met a guy from Bragg who was exceptional. Obviously, the Bragg guys and the Campbell guys were phenomenal at artillery, manual gunnery specifically. But I went to them and I was getting tutorials every night, trying to make sure I didn't fall behind. And then I went to the instructor a couple of times in class and asked him, "Hey, can you help me with this?" And he was like, Captain Huber, I got it that I'm here to answer questions, but what did you do? Didn't you learn all this in the basic course? And I said, "Brother, let me tell you, I'm an aviator." He didn't recognize the branch. And I said, "I was learning how to fly helicopters when I went through the basic course." And he went, "Oh my God, you're not an artillery." And it was absolutely hilarious. The whole small group started laughing. And I think he had a whole new understanding of, hey, there's a few of us that weren't as gifted and didn't have the background. So they helped us along. But I will tell you, again, not just the American students, but I would say the Romanian officer and the Saudi were very good about helping us non-field artillery guys get through manual gunnery and survive it. And I think that Marine Corps captain learned a lot. I think he was wiser for it. But, when you have a group of, 50 people and only one of them or two of them are non-field artillery, you kind of make assumptions.
Yeah, I remember those as well, because when I started in the FDC, we were using the slide rules, the MET-T books, a TI-59 calculator. And then my first tour in Korea, when I was in 2nd to 17th Field Artillery up at Camp Pelham on the DMZ, we were doing things manually and with the old Fade Axe left over from the Korean War. Yeah. So, I remember all those old days. And I left artillery just as we had gotten the new BCS system, the computerized BCS. Right. And I learned to use it right before I re-enlisted in chains. So, and that's the thing about the military. I mean, you can attest to it. You learn so much. You go from one thing to another. The level of responsibility is incredible. And, you learn so much because of the exposure and the experiences that they give to us. So, Bob, I want to continue our conversation here, but we're going to take just a short break to, again, hear from our sponsors, and then we will come back on the other side and continue our conversation.
That works. Thank you.
All right, welcome back, everyone. And you have been listening to the WGSN-DB Going Solo Veterans Corner with our guest tonight, retired Army Colonel Bob Huber. And we want to continue our conversation with Bob. And Bob, you've been around so much and traveled, and as I mentioned, you and I have been to so many of the same places. But one of the things I noticed on here too, you were in the 4th ID, which I spent some time in at Fort Carson when it was there. So, and I believe that was where you deployed to. Was it Iraqi Freedom? I think from there, wasn't it?
Yep, absolutely. Fond memories of that. I was actually when I departed overseas, I came to Fort Hood, and I had about 2 to 3 months of integrating into the unit. It was 4th ID staff. They were looking for aviation officers at the field grade level who had not done XOS3 time. I had already accomplished that, so they pulled me up to division staff. And the G4 at the time looked at me because they were tracking all the majors that were coming from Fort Leavenworth, because I was coming from another country's CGSC, if you will, Command and General Staff College. I was considered a bonus from DA, so they launched me over there, and the chief of staff and G4 did the interview of me, and they go, "So what can you do?" I was like, "Just throw it at me. I mean, just whatever work you need, I got it." So they started giving me a myriad of tasks, primarily focused on logistics. I did aviation in attack and cav units, but primarily I was a hangar rat, if you will. I love doing maintenance on both Cobras and Apaches, and that's where I cut my teeth on a lot of issues. We're in the hangar working with the soldiers, making sure that when we wanted to launch 24 aircraft, we could do it. So when I joined 4th ID, I went to division staff. They placed me in G4. I did a myriad of tasks, primarily focused on aviation maintenance for all of MNDB, Multinational Division Baghdad. So I believe at the time we had one aviation brigade at a time, and then we supported another, obviously, with parts pieces. You do a lot of horse trading when you're downrange, but our focus was Taji and supporting 4th ID when they had their aviation assets down there, and then again 1st Cav. Sometimes they were at the tail end as they were relief in place back and forth. But my G4 also asked me to conduct some assistance in contracting because they were having problems getting resources out to soldiers. Additionally, the buildup of COPS and FOBs that take, anybody who's been downrange, you got to get the T-walls, you got to get the chews, you got to get all that other stuff. And my G4 had some issues, and he said, "Bob, dig into it." So I would say that primarily aviation maintenance, but I would tell you it was QRF for the G4 and the chief of staff. So it kept me on my toes. And it kind of goes through the common thread is a jack of all trade, master of none. So I got different taskers, and I just did the best I could with the people I had, resources.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head, a jack of all trade and master of either none or very few, because I often felt like that as well. But, I have to say, the aviation maintenance part, one of our younger boys did 5 years in the Marines, and he was in aviation maintenance, was an aviation crew chief, worked on the Ospreys. And he really seemed to enjoy it. So, and I still remember those pilots in Korea when I was stationed over there. They were a brood of their own, so to speak. So, but having done so many of the things that you've done, one of the things I have to admire definitely was the time you spent as actually an instructor at West Point?
Sure. Again, great opportunity. I was actually, quick story. I was downrange in Baghdad with 4th ID. I had always, worked the timing out. When am I going to get my last assignment? So I had said once, I was a senior major. The dream was hopefully pin on 05 and then retire, live happily ever after. And my dream assignment was Destin, Florida. I think it's Eglin Air Force Base, right?
Yeah.
So out at Fort Walton, Niceville area in Florida. I mean, anybody who's been down there, I mean, the sandy beaches are white, everything's great. And I had the orders cut, when you're downrange and you're coordinating for your following assignment, usually you get at least your top 2 picks, maybe top 3. But I had cut the deal. I got the RFO, request for orders. We were all set. And one of my former bosses emailed me and said, "Hey, what are you doing next?" And I said, "I'm going on my dream assignment, and then I'm going to hang it up." And he goes, he was my squadron commander when I was an XO. So he said, "You know what? No, you're not. I just called your branch manager. Send me your officer record brief, your ORB, and you're coming to help teach at West Point." And I laughed. I was like, "What is this? Some experiment to take a country hillbilly from the mountains of North Carolina?" And he goes, he gave me a compliment that I've never forgotten. And he said, "Bob, you're as real as it gets. You have nothing but the best interest in heart for soldiers, and our cadets need to see that." And it resonated with me because being a prior enlisted fellow myself, it's all about Joe. It's all about the soldier. Even when I was in Baghdad, I created my own calendar, and on the calendar was one of those famous pictures of a soldier that was sweating. He had mud on his face. He was just exhausted, smoking a cigarette, and his K-Pod or Kevlar, I just dated myself, was on the side, and he was leaning on a T-wall, and you could just tell he's exhausted. And I put on the picture, on the bottom of the picture, what have you done for him today? And I made my own calendar. So every month, of the 15 that we were downrange, that's my focus. And I would tell you, getting an opportunity to teach at West Point, you get exposed to so much, but I wanted to let those cadets know, number one, teach them about the importance of leadership, both art and science, but more importantly, talk about the important position of being a leader and leading these individuals into combat, because that's where they were. When I was at West Point from what was it? It would have been 2009 to 2011. And I had just come back from downrange. So it was real with me. I mean, when I went to football games and the cannons went off for, so West Point scored a touchdown, I knew it. And immediately you go back to when you were there. I was that fresh off of downrange. But I will tell you, I consider it one of my highest honors to be able to teach there, the history, and the opportunity to teach those cadets the importance and how holy it is to be able to lead soldiers downrange in garrison, in other countries, and take care of them, train them, teach them, give them the resources they need. Don't ever abuse that authority that you have, and understand the true value of servant leadership.
Yeah, I mean, well, I can see why he gave you that compliment just listening to you. You can tell you can tell you're passionate about it. So you spent what, 29-year career, right, before you retired? Last finished up right here at in Northern Virginia at Fort Belvoir, I believe, wasn't it?
That's correct.
Yeah. So you decided to retire, and I know you moved into your civilian career and continued your love of aviation. And I know you started off some working for the government in unmanned aircraft systems, which a lot of people at the beginning they thought everything was a drone. But you worked in unmanned aircraft, right, at the beginning of your civilian career?
No, absolutely. And my last tour, as you stated, was commander of USASA, United States Army Aeronautical Services Agency, right there at Fort Belvoir. So the short version is I was the Army's point man on airfields, air traffic control, airspace. One of the additional tasks that we had was all the services came together, and they had an organization, if you will, that focused on unmanned systems. And we plugged into another group in the FAA that had some of the other branches of government, if you will. Department of Homeland Security, NASA, FAA, NGA was there as well, and basically work out issues in unmanned systems and the integration of those systems into the national airspace. Consequently, I had an opportunity to meet quite a few individuals that worked with the FAA, and as luck would have it, I was able to, after retirement, step into a job with the FAA working on drone integration. All of this obviously in AVS, but that specifically was AUS, unmanned systems. And they had a pilot program, integration pilot program that was directed by the president at that time, that said, hey, we want you to go out and pursue applications of state, local, tribal governments that want to help integrate unmanned systems in the national airspace. So I was part of that for about 12 months. And then I got another opportunity with Flight Standards, working the drone integration from the flight standards perspective, which I thought was a pretty interesting piece. Number one, working with the customer, if you will. And number two, helping to integrate that and making sure it's in concert with all our regulations and policies. So more of a macro view. I did that for a couple of years. And then most recently, I had an opportunity to become the program manager for VSRP, Voluntary Safety Reporting Program, clearly an employee voice safety program. And I am getting to work with some great individuals. A lot of them are prior military veterans. Yeah. So it's really enjoyable. But I would tell you, addressing safety issues at the macro level in the FAA has been a daunting task. But, you know, when you're resourced properly and you have good leadership above you, you know, that makes it all much more palatable. So very fortunate. And I am continuing to pursue my my government service time in that scope of employment.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's kind of interesting. You know, you spent all those years in the Army serving on active duty, and now you're continuing, you know, your service in, you know, as a federal civilian. So I would imagine by the time you finally do retire again, I would imagine you probably have about 50 years or so, give or take, between the two before you decide to hang it up. But I have to tell you, I mean, it's really admirable, you know, to see what you've done with your career and, you know, what you're continuing to do. But you know, work can't be all of it. So I know you've been married for a number of years now. You have 2 children. Would you like to share a little bit about your family with us?
No, that's great. And thanks for that, Paul. My lovely bride, much better half. And clearly, if you met her, you would understand I'm married way up. Me, Suk. And I met her on my first tour in Korea, and we've been married since 1996. We have 2 great children, Chris, who is 24 and lives in Hawaii, and Jenna, who is 23 as of Saturday. And she's actually coming up to meet us here at the beach, Carolina Beach, to help celebrate her birthday. Jenna went to University of Louisville, graduated with a degree in political science. Chris did 1 year of school, had a 3.0, and said, "Dad, I'm not ready for the classroom. I want to go out and work." So, you know, I sat here and I said, "All right, you're an adult male. You make your own choices, understand it." And he has not looked back. He has done ship fitting out in San Diego, and he bounced over to Oahu, where he just got picked up in a government service job, and he's going to be working at Pearl Harbor doing ship fitting. And he's thrilled to death. He loves that field, and he is set to marry his high school sweetheart this December in Oahu. So Mama and I are using that as an excuse at the end of the year to see if we can't go camp out at his place. Oh, yeah. Nice, inexpensive Hawaii vacation.
There you go. Yeah, my wife and I have one scheduled in December to go to Oahu, but unfortunately, we don't have anybody to stay with, so we had to pony up for our own place while we're there. But yeah, so I mean, it sounds like you're very proud, you know, of your family, and so what do you guys like? I understand that you're getting ready to start a vacation here with the family, but what else is some of the things you guys like to do when you're not working?
Again, that's a good question. Family is very important to us. God, family, country, in that order, and then work. But I will tell you that getting an opportunity to spend time with family. We went to see the boy and his high school sweetheart back in November of last year. The daughter is coming up to celebrate her birthday. Unfortunately, my son wasn't able to fly over, but he's actually able to make it a couple weeks from now. And he's going to link up with us in Virginia and bring his bride to be. And we're going to go hang out in Northern Virginia and go see the sights, DC, do some hiking. I would say my wife and I, since we're empty nesters, there's plenty of things to do in Northern Virginia. We enjoy, I would say, the simple life, whether that's fishing in creeks or local lakes. We enjoy walking the dog, going on trails and hiking, and just sightseeing. The other day we were at Harper's Ferry, and I had not been there before, and we took that drive up. What a beautiful area. A lot of history, obviously, but just thoroughly enjoyed it and had a great time. The drive there, the drive back, and the sightseeing and everything else. So it doesn't take a lot to keep us keep us focused, but getting out and seeing America since I've been away for so much, I think maybe 11 or 12 of my years were overseas. I thoroughly enjoy exploring new areas, even if it's something as simple as a newspaper stand or an old convenience store or an old gas station, and talking to the fella on the bench that can help me find out where I need to go without a GPS, if you will.
Yeah, there you go. Well, you know what? You truly had a career to be admired, and now you're kind of, how can you say, probably living the second half of your dream. You've got your family and being able to do a lot of things. But I want to ask you before we wrap it up. There's one more question. And I think this will be interesting. I wanted to ask you, given our conversation, you shared a lot about how you feel about a number of things. If you had something, a particular message that you would like to share with the other veterans or the audience in general, what would that be?
I'm gonna take some liberties with that question, if I may, Paul, and I will rattle off a few statements or phrases that I live by, if that's okay.
Okay.
The first one, I think, treat others as you wish to be treated. It's the golden rule. You have the secular and the religious view. I will tell you, treat your fellow man and woman with respect and dignity, no matter who they are, where they're from, what they have or what they don't have, whether they're in your food chain or not, just because that's how you're supposed to be as a human being. Yeah. And I have lived by that, and I think that's important. Servant leadership, very important. Some people think the soldiers and sailors, airmen, Marines are there to serve you. I am a firm believer in that. As a leader, you're there to serve your soldiers and sailors and airmen. You resource them, you take care of them, you challenge them with training. I would tell the people that I worked with in all the hangars I was in, if I have to sweep the hangar floor and hold the flashlight, whatever I need to do to help you all do your mission better, I will do it. And I think that mindset has helped me a lot. Perseverance. You will face adversity in your life throughout in multiple fronts. I think we all can attest to that. We've all had challenges. Sometimes you just continue to go. I know that there was a time in Baghdad when I had a colleague of mine, unfortunately found out that he had lost a family member. And at the time, we were in the middle of a fight in Solder City. He was unable to go home at that certain time. And I heard him have a tough time through the wall of our chew, if you will. And when you see that, you kind of take a step back and go, wow, that fella's going through a tough time right now. We've all had losses. We've all had adversity. Sometimes the best thing you can do is put your arm around the other individual and say, I'm right here with you. And that's the difference that you talked about in the beginning. What separates the military from a lot of our civilian counterparts is we owe it to each other. We're bonded. That bond that runs between all of us as fellow veterans is important to me, and I think it's important to everybody that's listening to this right now. And Paul, I would like to at least say one last thing. Thank you and Cece for doing the show, because it's so important to reach out and talk to all the veterans, to reach out and touch those veterans, to get that camaraderie going. And I think what you are doing with the help of CC is extremely honorable. And I just want to thank you for being an opportunity to share that with you.
No, I really appreciate it. And I appreciate you, again, like I said, taking the time to come on the show, especially, as you took off to start your vacation. So, Bob, I want to thank you very much for coming on the show. And, you've been a wonderful guest, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate the time.
All right. And for those of you in our audience out there, as you know, at the end of each show, we normally will put up some information for you that we think it might be good for you to have. And we've talked a little bit about this in the past, about PTSD and the number of veterans who are struggling all the time, veterans who need help, veterans who, quite frankly, are afraid to ask for help. So if you're out there, you're a fellow veteran and you need help, get it. Don't be ashamed. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of the stigma. Get the help that you need. And for those of you that are out there watching, there's the information for you. You can see it right there on the VA portal. Make sure that you go and encourage someone who needs the help to get the help. We want to stem the tide of the over 20 veterans who commit suicide every day. So please get the help. Reach out to someone and help them if they need it. All right. For the audience also, we want to thank our guest tonight, Bob Huber, and we want to thank you for spending time with us on the show tonight. For those of you veterans out there listening, we want to thank you for your service. And as always, the audience, thank you for joining us here on the Veterans Corner on the WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. And we ask you to please look us up on the goingsolomedia.com. We hope to see you 2 weeks from, it'll be 4 weeks from tonight, as I will be out on the next show date, but we want to see you on our next show, our next live show. So everyone, hope you enjoy your holiday, and thank you for watching.